Hello and welcome to Pro Wrestling 101. I'm your co-host JP John Poz from the two-man power trip of wrestling, and I am joined by the greatest ECW World Heavyweight Champion of all time, and ECW World Tag Team Champion of multiple time, WWF Hardcore Champion. He made the spinning tombstone pile driver famous. PJ Polacco, just incredible. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Getting ready for the holidays as we record this. So, yeah,
Yeah.
excited and just happy to be here with you.
Nice, good stuff. Holidays. To me, it's funny. It's like, okay, shouldn't it be relaxation time? It never is. It's always crazy. Like you're doing stuff,
Yep.
getting gifts, running into a million different people, going to a million different
Yep.
places. It's never relaxing.
Not at all. And our boss, Vince Russo, hit me up, wants to do the podcast for AEW review right after. We're shooting this December 23rd. So right after Wednesday's Dynamite, we're supposed to do it, and I could have killed him. But nonetheless, it'll be that'll be my third podcast for today. So yeah, I committed too much today because I was trying to catch up from this past week. It's been a little rough. So, but
Yep.
anywho, we will get through this, and hopefully Christmas Day we may actually rest because I got to make it down to your neck of the woods tomorrow as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yep, it'll be crazy. Hopefully we can relax finally and get
Yes.
fat.
Yes. And hopefully AEW is halfway decent, so you won't fall asleep during it, and you'll
Oh
be
my
able to.
God, I know that's going to be challenging. So we'll see. We will see.
I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but Russo used to like record himself watching some of the shows, and he would literally, honestly, fall asleep.
That's funny. That's too much. He's getting old. That's what it
Yeah.
is. Attribute it to age.
Or you could say the product is so bad it put him to sleep.
That too. That too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So today, the Pro Wrestling 101 side of things, I wanted to talk about making a comeback and what that means. I don't mean like, hey, Shawn Michaels is retired making comeback. I'm talking about the
Right.
actual pro wrestling business making the comeback in the match.
Sure.
So what does it mean, and what does that mean to you when I say making a comeback?
Well, the way I like to put it, and that's again the term that pro wrestling has used for many, many, many decades. It's similar to what happens in a movie. Rocky is one of them, but it just goes to the way you tell stories, really, from back in the days of literature. The good guy has been getting beat up, whether it's life or in a ring or in a war, whatever. And then usually at some point he's beaten down so bad, but he's miraculously starts to, put one foot in front of the other and start hitting everything, and things start coming into stride, and he prevails against whatever bad was going on, as it says, comes back against adversity. So that's really what it is in the world of pro wrestling. It's just after you've been beaten up for a while, and you, like in sports, you make a comeback, and that's what it is.
So when you say making a comeback, and let's just say you're a greenhorn or somebody who's like
Sure.
completely new to wrestling, when you're in the ring, let's say you're the veteran, they're new. If like, do you word it like, all right, let's go make your comeback? Is that how it's worded with you guys, the
Yes.
wrestlers?
Absolutely, make your comeback, and that's the funny thing is, so many people don't know how to make a proper comeback at all. If you watch, and I'll just keep it to pro wrestling. If you watch any of the greats make a full comeback, it's a good amount of time. It's a good 1.5 to 2 minute flurry of offense, and a lot of the veterans would like to tell me to keep it moving. Maybe after the heel is beating you up, getting almost has you completely down and out. You somehow stop him for a minute. You're both down and out, and then you start to climb back up, and you start one punch, two punches, and then make your comeback, which may be, a lot of veterans like Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin would tell me to keep it moving. Like if I was the baby face and I was wrestling a heel, we would do a double down spot, meaning both wrestlers are down from either a missed move or a move I had reversed, where we're both selling. And then, I'd make it to my feet. Maybe the heel would go to throw a punch. I would block it and then start coming back, starting to punch him and take advantage, take over, and then maybe shoot him off, give him a one move, shoot him off, give him another, a lot of motion right there. You want to, because the psychology behind it is fans have been watching this match slowed down to a heel's pace of methodical, and working you over move, maybe a cover, another move, cover, something like that. So you really want to quicken the pace and do some pretty cool stuff, signature stuff as well. Is added into the comeback, and after maybe two or three moves that you hit, with movement, then maybe you hit one of your signature moves for a pinfall, false finish. Maybe the heel kicks out, and then you can go into a sequence of false finishes where maybe, you could exchange or tease some reversals until eventually the babyface, if he's going over, would hit a finish, and depending on who wins or who loses, but that's technically what a comeback would be. Quickening the pace of the match as you're literally coming back.
Who calls for it though? Is it the ref? Is it you guys? Is it the heel?
Oh, it's
who's calling the match?
definitely, well, in very traditional terms, the heel would call the comeback, or would call at least when the comeback would be. In my matches, I always called for when it was time for when I worked as a heel to start making the comeback, because what you do is you really, and I mean, I know we've been working in the COVID area, and I've only wrestled once or twice in this era, but normally with fans, you can really start to tell time wise when it's time, and fans have kind of seen enough of this. You feel it, you say, all right, let's go home, and you really turn it up a gear or two going into the comeback. It's very instrumental, but also, Rock would like to do it. If you ever seen Rock when he was in his prime, working with Austin, he would have the match would be almost down to here, and then it would really start to take an upward turn, because and it's so important in a comeback, I should say, when you have them here and you slowly start to rise, and you hit one move, it's like, oh, another move just slightly a bit better, oh, and then it's like a crescendo. But if you lose the fans in the ride to the top and the comeback, it is almost impossible to get them back. So it's very important for the heel to feed the comeback, to bump properly, and you'll see some of the best do it. They bounce up and down. They take a bump, they get back up, feed to the ropes, bam, 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 because you really are trying to drive the fans up in a high tempo, exciting sequence of moves. So as a heel, I always like to call it, but even as a babyface, I just would feel it. You would feel it, and you could kind of tell when the fans have had enough, and it's kind of time, because really you could misread it. So timing is very important on making of a comeback.
Are all comebacks created equal? Like, is it all the same, or is each one its own separate, different comeback?
That's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. Any good, well, not good, any traditional pro wrestler that has seen comebacks, there's always usually you would kind of start them the same. Shawn would like to do punch, punch, shoot the guy off. The guy would reverse. Shawn would hit that flying forearm, do the nip up. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then like do a couple other things. I would do something similar. So yeah, you kind of try to keep it the same, but like every match, it also needs to be a little different. Where then you could kind of put your little swerves in there and your ducks and dodges and such. But yeah, they should be a little bit the same as far as move set, but it could be added in at different times. But the pacing of that is of the most importance of a comeback.
So let's just say, like, you're the heel and you're calling for the comeback. You're bumping like crazy. What if the guy is like the timing is off? Is that just going to just kill the crowd? And you know what I mean? Like, you want him to be more aggressive, but he's too slow. Like, that's going to kill it.
It will kill it. He's got to be there to meet the heel. Like I was always told, even especially when I worked, X-Pac was really, really good at feeding comebacks, especially in tag team matches. We'd always do it the same. It's funny, as heels, we would shoot the guy off for a double clothesline. The guy would duck, the babyface would duck. He would hit a double clothesline on us. So we called it duck the double on us. As we were both down, then he makes the tag. The babyface would come in. I'd feed first. One down. Pac would feed down. So you get like two or three, two bumps a piece. But he's just, you can notice the pace is quickening. Bump down, bump down. And if the babyface isn't being aggressive and keeping up with the heel kind of giving himself to them, it really is detrimental, and you will not pick them back up, because right there, fans want to. That's when they're at their most exciting. That's why it's important to kind of slow the pace down in the middle of the heat, which is traditionally, again, I'm speaking traditionally, it doesn't have to be this way, but when heels are getting the heat on baby faces, a lot of times they will grab holds and try to work holds. The purpose is to almost get the crowd down a bit, because you can't have them up here the whole time. So if you bring them down here and then start to build, they're going to go. And it's an art form. I mean, feeding for a good comeback is an art form. And if a baby face is not there or even cognizant of what is going on, it could be disastrous, and it could really affect, the finish of a match.
Is there a different style comeback? Let's say, like Southern style wrestling, is a lot
Sure.
different than Northern. Is there like a style comeback kind of, or is it each guy on its own has his own style of comeback?
There are, I want to word this correctly without putting my foot in my mouth. There are many styles, I guess. All of them really are based around the same thing. Like, you could stop someone, like if they're making a comeback, and if a baby face is kind of good enough, or is smart and like knows enough that as he's cleaning house, so to speak, and the heels are bumping for him, he could get stopped for a moment, a split, like 10 seconds, and then have the baby face reverse him. Like, if I'm working with Rocky and The Rock and he's bumping me, I'm feeding down, 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 maybe take a big move from him. As he goes to do something, I stop him for a second, shoot him off. He could short whip me into maybe one of his, you know what I mean? It's got to be, so you could have little dips in there. But again, this is where I say timing is of essence, where you don't want to turn that. You want to hear the, oh, like, you really, that's where listening is so important, because that's where you'll have the fans the most. If you've done your job throughout the match, that's where you have them at their most ready to cheer, is at that moment. So it's very important to really know what you want to do. So I would say there are different ways, but still the process or the concept should stay the same, as it's the baby face really shining up, or at least shining up until you go into the false finishes and exchanges that are closer to the end.
Is there a comeback in every match?
That's a good question too. It doesn't have to be. There are many matches. These are harder matches to have, by the way, unless there's just straight up squash matches where you would not see a comeback. And there's also matches where you have two guys, because now we're in the world where not everything is black and white, heel or babyface. There's a lot of gray. But you will find that a lot of times, one will assume the role of a babyface and a heel. When I mean assume, the role is not like play the role of a heel, but assume the bump and feed structure of a match. So, but it's almost rare that you don't have a comeback, because at some point somebody's going to have to be down. Now, you could do a 50-50 split during the match where you're essentially trading moves the entire match, but that also can be done. But sometimes that's not as rewarding. Like, you do 3 moves, I'll stop you, I do 3 moves. That can get boring real quick. So you're really trying to tell a story throughout that, because the whole purpose of all of this is telling the story, and depending on the story you want to tell. But at some point, a form of a comeback is usually used.
With comebacks, let's just say Hulk Hogan, for instance, like he seemed like he was the master of it. He's probably, to me, one of the better guys at the comeback. Is his comeback, let's just say, different than anybody else, or is just structured differently? It's the same essence. It's the same thing. It is a comeback in the grand scheme of things.
Sure. His was the bread and butter. It should be kind of the easy way to really, not easy, but way to think about it. He would start to shake and do his thing, and eventually he'd give you the point, and he would just start to punch, punch, punch. shoot you off, maybe give you a clothesline or an elbow, again, shoot you off again, give you the big boot into the leg drop. It was quite, quite signature and quite easy. And again, depending on who Hulk would work and how the match was laid out, there could be swerves in there where, maybe he goes for his leg drop and somebody moves and hits something on him, and then, you know what I mean, that from there it could go into other false finishes or other finishes, so to speak. So yeah, it can go a lot of ways, but Hulk really had it down to a very simplistic and one of the most common and useful comebacks around, really, and well known.
Yeah, I feel like his was like automatic huge pop. You know what I mean? Like he bread, like you said, bread and butter. Like, yep, here we go, boom, huge pop.
Yeah, and same thing with Bret Hart too. You do the reverse atomic drop, the reverse ass bump, the clothesline, the bulldog. And that's the thing is one
Russian
thing.
leg sweep.
Russian left, of course. I forgot about that one. But like a good wrestler should know that structure, and I'm surprised that a lot more wrestlers don't take certain comebacks or certain avenues just to keep it simple. I feel that a lot of times when I watch wrestling, they don't fully embrace, because you could certainly still do a form of a comeback without keeping it so 1980s. You can certainly bring it to 2020 and do it in today's world of pro wrestling, the way it has changed. You just have to get creative with it. I mean, you could certainly even do a comeback and go, have dives to the floor if you so, create it properly. And again, you're trying to maximize crowd effectiveness and response. So there's a million different ways to do it. I'm just surprised more people don't know how to execute it the way it should be executed. Because like I said, that should be the point in the match where you're moving at the quickest pace,
Does there or can there be more than one comeback in a match, or is that kind of diluting it?
There could be. There certainly could be. There's in tag matches as well, because there's really, you know what I mean. There's more people there. It's almost like a shorter heat, and then like a mini comeback, and then you tag the other person, and then they get stopped for a longer set of heat. So yeah, there certainly can do that. Or I mean, really, you could add it at any place in the match. You just better be prepared if you put it somewhere. If you have a 20-minute match and you put your comeback in the 10-minute portion of it, you better have some really intense false finishes and interesting stuff in there, because again, if constructed properly, or at least the way it is in traditional pro wrestling, it's going to be hard to maximize the crowd pop, I should say, because some of the greats have always kept it fairly simple,
When you make a comeback, let's say it's Aldo, or actually maybe it could be Aldo,
just incredible. I've wrestled
or
as
just
a
incredible.
babyface. Yeah.
What's your kind of maneuvers, or what is your comeback when you're doing your comeback?
Sure. I'll usually do a double down where both guys are down after, selling. We'll both start to come up. They'll throw a punch. I'll block it, punch, shoot it. He'll shoot another punch. I'll block it, punch again. Then I'll just punch him back into the corner, shoot him off. As he comes off, I kick him in the stomach. He bends over. I hit the ropes. I do a spinning DDT. Bam. As he gets up again, I shoot him off and, do something else. So sometimes I change it right there, boom, to where he goes down a third time or a second time. And then I'll probably take him into the turnbuckle and do a spot out of the corner. Sometimes, depending on the crowds, I'll do the old 10 punches in the corner thing, and then I'll have the heel at that point. I'll have the heel stop me. He'll put me behind. Turn him around, scoop him up, spinning tombstone, 1, 2, 3. So that's how I usually do it. But again, it depends on who you're wrestling and for what organization and what's your expectations. Because if you're in a place like an AEW or New Japan, you're going to definitely probably want to put more wrinkles in it, and also, some more stuff than that. I would add a super kick in there as well. So I didn't do a great job of explaining it. But again, usually three moves in that order to bump with into something where I could counter and then hit my finish. which is usually the best way to do it, in my opinion.
When you're doing that, and let's just say you throw wrinkles in there and it's a false finish, where do you go after that? Let's just say, it's not the finish, but you just did your comeback. Where do you go from there?
Well, then you just start pulling out the big moves. You pull out big moves, and you could start telling the story from there. You could just you're throwing everything but the kitchen sink out, and then you can kind of you hit him with one thing, he'll hit you with another thing, and from there, really, and then that's where selling comes in, and you really then have to think and really kind of say, okay, how am I going to play this? Because that's when it can get confusing. Because again, you don't want to lose the people, so you really have to be careful and think about how you want to. Because it's okay to slow it down after you've popped them high like that, but you're going to have to do some pretty cool moves. That's where it'd be like, superplexes off the top, or maybe a table spot, or whatever it may be, something big to then get the 1-2 out, so to speak. Maybe if it was me, I'd pick them up. Go if they kicked out of the tombstone, I would pick them up, go for the tombstone for a second time, maybe do a reversal. They would hit me with it 1-2. I would kick out, and then I've done this several times. From that kick out, the guy I was wrestling would climb to the top rope, go for a big move off the top. Then I'd hit him with the super kick as he's coming from the top. Another cover 1-2, depending if you want him to kick out or not. So you see what I'm saying? You're getting bigger and bigger, or counter and counter, until you go home. And if you have managers out there or people at ringside that you want to involve, where it looks like they're going to either cheat to win, or if you're babyface, maybe the manager hooks you, a ref bump, whatever, is distracted, and you go from there. So there's a lot of, that's what I mean about little dips and stuff. There's a lot of ways from there you can go. You just got to be very careful of, again, knowing how to keep it one-upping itself, so you don't lose that precious momentum that you worked so hard to get during the match.
What if you're doing your comeback, false finish? What if the crowd isn't into it? Is that in your head? Is that a mistake though? Like, okay, we should have finished it there. The comeback should have been the finish. Does that ever happen in a match where it's like, man, the crowd wanted it and we didn't get it, and they kind of got deflated?
Yeah, that's happened, sure. And again, that's usually, it depends. It could be the crowd, it could be you, it could have been something that maybe wasn't executed properly, or the crowd could have just, what I mean? Sometimes we think, I think we tend to be selfish in the ring sometimes, where we think, it sounds good to us, but maybe to them, to the fans, I'm saying, it's not that great. So you have to really have a good ear and really be objective in the ring. And this is why I get so crazy about people scripting so much and not having the ability to call an audible. It's like a great quarterback being out there and checking out a defense and doing check downs and knowing where to throw the football. You got to really listen to that crowd and kind of make an audible and know we need to go home now, or, we could play and still kind of try to do something here. So that it takes a really keen ear to do, but you got to know what you're doing, because once, like I said, once you've lost them, you're not getting them back. You're just not.
I was at an indie show a couple years ago, and basically the two guys were talking. The ref was there too, and they were talking about doing a spot, getting the manager involved. So the guy's making his comeback, the manager gets involved, the manager goes off the apron, the crowd pops huge. The ref said that should be the finish. The guy goes, "No, we need to do this, this, and this afterwards." So the crowd got totally deflated because of that. The ref, when they got back, the ref said, "I told you should have been the finish." So it's one of those things where I know, I've heard it happen.
Yeah.
But I just thought it's funny. It's like, wow, the ref was right. He knew the comeback better than the wrestlers.
Yeah, and that is unless you're over to a point where you're going to hit them with something really special. For me, I used to do it, man. It was down to a science. Like when I had Francine, I would always go home after the cat fight if we had the privilege of using a cat fight with the two ladies, because you get a huge pop from there, and especially if you're playing a heel, they're up for it. You want to deflate them right there too. That's the best way, when you know what I mean. And that's usually where you would put it. And the ref too, like that, or with the manager. You're not going to, usually if the manager is doing a good spot and the manager gets knocked off, or stuff like that. That's usually at an indie show with lesser known talent. You're not going to get a bigger reaction than that. So it's very important.
Sometimes you got to listen to the ref. He may know more than the guys.
Very usually they do, because they've been in there probably a lot more than the performers, because they're out there 4 or 5 times a night.
It's true.
Yeah.
Who do you think is? I mean, we mentioned Hogan. Obviously, he's one of the best. To me, he's like the comeback guy. If you think about it, but who else do you think has a good comeback or made good comebacks?
Man. Shawn Michaels, I liked his comeback a lot. It was simple. It was easy. Bret Hart, again, to the point. I like that generation, like those '90s guys comebacks. Who else? Hogan, Warrior too did a great comeback.
Yeah.
I mean, his
Yep.
was more of the close or shoulder tackle. You know what I mean? Clothesline stuff, but still it worked. Who else? The Rockers did a good one. The Rock and Roll Express did a good one. Dusty Rhodes with the elbows. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the big elbow, and then at the time he would drop it. So I mean, those guys were always great. I mean, I know it seems kind of generic, but all the baby faces you could really think of. And it's funny, Flair was the only unique guy that would do a high spot, like doing the bump where he'd flip in the corner as one of his comeback spots. Somehow he would always get that in there during a comeback, but he made it work for him. And he's supposed to be taking the move, so that was kind of different. But yeah, those were always Steamboat too. Steamboat would do like the double chops and stuff like that. Those were pretty cool. So yeah, those are my guys. Luger didn't have a good comeback. If you really ever watch Lex Luger, he did not have a very good comeback at all. He was very awkward. The Road Warriors had a pretty good comeback too. So because they would always do the same kind of signature stuff, and they would end with I think Hawk would do that fist. That's where he would jump up and do the standing fist jump, and then they would get him up for the whatever they called that thing. What did they call that thing? Doomsday device. Yeah.
I always thought the Steiner brothers had a great one too, because the crowd would be electric. It's like, where are they going to throw the guys? You know what I mean? Like, when they're doing the comeback, they're going to throw these guys somewhere.
Right. Where are they going to land?
Yeah. Where are they going to land? Yeah. It's like, no, I always thought that was great. Warrior too, with like the shake up when he would shake the ropes and stuff.
Cena does a good comeback.
Yep.
John Cena, and again, we don't. I guess because we get so much of him, we don't give him enough credit. But John Cena gives a hell of a comeback.
Yeah, Cena's up there. Rock and Roll Express. I feel like the crowd always really got into Ricky Morton and Ricky Steamboat when they would do their comebacks. Like they would scream and yell and really get into it.
Yeah, and again, that's just as a babyface, that is your biggest responsibility, is to once again, you sell to the point where if the fans really like you, they're going to want you to kick ass. And again, just think Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed, or Rocky Balboa, Clubber Lang. You're getting beat up miserably, and nobody thinks you're going to be able to come back, and then somehow you pull it through. Some of the greatest comebacks in sports, same way. It's like it's almost like there's no way you could do it, and somehow it gets done. So it's cheesy, but it's pro wrestling.
And movies too. Like you're right, Rocky. When then they hit that music, and then also like do do do. It's like the music's getting you pumped up, and that's bringing it up to another level too. And Rocky's going to knock out Clubber Lang or something. Really cool.
Yeah, and it really is the way to tell stories. You know what I mean? It's we dissect it in wrestling terms, but if you read stories, like I said, even ancient literature, Star Wars, all that kind of stuff, it shows like the good guys struggle against the evil, and then somehow throughout whatever odds that are against you, you come through. And that's really what wrestling is. You know what I mean? You're telling stories that may not not every wrestler may want to tell that story. Maybe you're telling a different story, but I think that's important too, is like trying, a lot of wrestlers don't look at it that way. They look at it as okay, what kind of moves am I going to do that look cool? You just ask yourself, what story am I trying to tell, and how do I tell that story, both inside the ring for that evening, just as a match, and then as a character, like who am I, who do I want to be, and what am I trying to portray and get across to the fans. So instead of looking at it move for move, you should look at it as like, ask yourself, what am I trying to convey here to these fans about, this particular match, and who I am as a wrestler, because they remember that stuff.
Yep.
As we did.
Yeah, but I can't think of too many current guys. Like we're talking about old school guys, like older guys doing the awesome comeback. Can't think of any, really new school guys or guys today other than like Daniel Bryan. Where I like this comeback. I can't really think of too many other guys. And you mentioned Cena too, of course, but I mean like the guys that are actually wrestling now. It's just like nobody really.
Yeah. And it's very strange too. I'm surprised, because there hasn't been a lot of those iconic guys anymore. And I don't know if it's by design or if it's just, the way it's becoming, but we were raised on that stuff, and it was important. Like I said, we're talking 30 plus years of, Hulk Hogan comebacks, and they're still recognizable to this day, as well as many others,
Yeah. Yep. So true. You could just think back, like, oh my God, Hogan's making the comeback. And just get that thought in your head, like, wow, it's just great memory and storytelling. Just such a great story to be told.
Yeah.
So we'll head towards the wrap here. We'll head towards the finish. I think that's a great stopping point. Is there anybody else you could think of as far as just comebacks of that you just particularly liked?
Nothing that pops to my head. No, I'd be really reaching. I mean, there were the guys those are the guys that I named that I really enjoyed watching as a wrestler. Guys like Andre didn't really have comebacks. It's kind of funny. And some other iconic guys that I can't really remember them having these comebacks. So I would just keep it to, for me, the guys that I loved the most were the traditional babyface comebacks, just for me, that's what worked. So,
it's such a lost art. That's for
it
sure.
Truly
if
is.
We can only name one current guy, it's a lost art.
Yeah, definitely.
So get into the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. You can follow PJ at PJ Polacco on both Instagram and Twitter. You can go to my website, tmptempire.com for more. And PJ, what do you got?
Right now, man, we're doing the you're not going to get this anytime soon, so just follow the AEW review show on Vince Russo's brand. I believe it's patreon.com/RussoTWC for the AEW review show, and that's pretty much it, man.
And of course, Pro Wrestling Tees, right? You're still dominating on Pro Wrestling Tees.
Yeah, ProWrestlingTees.com/Just Incredible. I got to work on some new designs, but right now I got 20 out there. If you guys are interested, some pretty cool retro and new style Just Incredible t-shirts. So check them out.
And the Indie Connection as well.
Yes, IndieConnection.com. That's a new I know I'm all over today, dude. I tell you, preparing for Christmas, we talked about it a little bit in the beginning of the show, is like the Christmas is supposed to be relaxing and it's nothing but a stressor. But theindyconnection.com is a new place that I'm working with. I do shout out videos and stuff like that. And also I have one t-shirt available, but they do really cool stuff, not just with me, with many other wrestlers. So go on over and check that out, theindyconnection.com.
Nice. And PJ, I'll let you wrap it up and take it out. The only way you know how.
All right. Guys, thank you very much for another episode of Pro Wrestling 101. Now, we're not just the coolest and we're not just the best. John Poz and I, we are just incredible. See you next time.